In this second, we're going to take the steps to create server objects, virtual server objects, and service objects, bind them together in the correct manner to implement load balancing. Let's begin. Our objectives are simple. We're going to create 3 server objects to represent our 3 servers. So one for server 3, our blue server, one for server 2, our green server, and so under NetScaler, traffic management, load balancing servers, we'll click on add once more. We'll call this one server underscore green underscore web. We'll put in its IP address, and we'll click on create. One more to go. So we'll call our third server server underscore blue underscore web, and that's at the IP address of 192.168.1.253. And we'll click on create. Great, we've got 3 server objects. These are objects in the NetScaler that are referring to the actual servers that are on the network. And if we want to sort these, we can click on a column and sort them either ascending or descending based We'll click on add. And let's call this service red HTTP because this service is going to be looking for HTTP and we're going to associate it with our red web server. Now, because we already defined the web server we'll go ahead and click on Existing Server and then simply pick it from the list. The protocol is HTTP and the default port is TCP/80. That's fantastic. We'll click on OK. Now, this service by default is also associated with a monitor that's keeping track of that server just to verify that it's responding. And to see that monitor, if we scroll to the bottom of this page, and at the very bottom where it says monitors, we can click on this monitoring section to go ahead and take a look at the details. So here it's showing us the monitor that's currently in place, which is called TCP default. And my question is, does that really mean that HTTP is up and running on that device? The answer is no. All it means is that TCP is responding. So the monitor did a TCP SYN request and it got an acknowledgement, and at least we know the box is up. It has a TCP/IP protocol stack running. However, if we want to be more granular, which is a great idea by the way, and instead of just doing a TCP handshake, verify that HTTP is really running, we could change this monitor from the default and use an HTTP specific monitor. And it's so easy to change the monitor type. Let's do it right here. We'll click on Add Binding. This is binding the monitor to the service that we're currently creating. So we'll click on Add Binding. So that's asking us to select the monitor. Now, if we wanted to create a new monitor, we could click on the plus symbol, or if we wanted to see the laundry list, the huge list of the current monitors, we simply click in this space and it would give us the list of monitors. And sure enough, right here there's one for HTTP. So let's select that. We'll go to the very bottom, click on OK, and then we'll click on Bind. So what we've done is we've bound the HTTP monitor with this service, and the service knows where the server is. So periodically this monitor is keeping track to see whether or not that service on its allocated server is responding and is up. And as long as that monitor keeps reporting back that it's up, the service is also considered to be up. And over here on the right hand side it says the last response was an HTTP response code of 200, which indicates that HTTP is running on that device based on the responses the monitor got back. So we'll click on Close. So let's remember where we are. We're creating this service for HTTP. We took a moment to modify the monitor associated with this service. We're going to click on the respective monitors are going to verify whether those other two servers are up and running and available for HTTP as well. Let's create the green service. We'll click on Add. We'll call this service green HTTP, and we'll point to an existing server because we already defined the server object, and that is the green server at .252. The protocol is HTTP for this server. HTTP monitor. Scroll to the bottom, click OK. And then click on Bind to make it happen. You'll notice that the default monitor is no longer there. Now it's just the HTTP monitor. So we'll click on Close and click on Done. And now we have two services, one for green, one for red. Our last one is blue. Let's click on Add and add that third service object. We'll call it Service Blue HTTP. So, Reader's Digest overview. We created 3 server objects pointing to the 3 servers we have in our topology. We created 3 service objects, and we kicked it up a notch by not using the default monitor to keep track of those 3 servers, but instead use the HTTP monitor for each of those 3 services to check on the status of those services on the servers. So our last step is to create a load balancing virtual server. So under Traffic Management, Load Balancing, we're going to go to Virtual Servers. And we'll click on Add. Let's give this guy a name. So we'll give this load balancing virtual server the name of LB Virtual Server RGB to represent the purpose we're going to use it for. We're going to load balance across the red, green, and blue servers. The protocol that this virtual server is going to be supporting is protocol HTTP. The port is 80, and we now get to currently have any virtual server to service bindings. We'll then click here where it says click to select your service you want to bind to this virtual server. So we'll click here, we'll select service red, click OK, and click on bind. And then we'd repeat that process for green and blue as well. So we'll click here where it says we currently have one binding in place. We'll click add binding. We'll click here once again to identify the services that currently exist on this NetScaler. We'll go ahead and select green. Click OK, click on bind, and then we can click on add binding right here once more. Click in the box to see the list of existing services. We'll click on blue, click on OK, and click on bind. And now we have all three of our services bound to this virtual server. And now we can close that window. It indicates we have 3 services that are bound to this virtual server, and we'll click on OK. So we'll click on done, and it currently says down, 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 doobie doo, down, down. So we'll click on refresh, and now they're up. So when we initially connected the virtual server to the However, over here on the right, check it out, there's method. So we'll click on the plus symbol, which brings that over as a separate pane on the left-hand side, and now we can choose our load balancing method. So from the drop-down list, we have lots of options. We're going to choose round robin for our simple demonstration, and click on OK, and click on done. So let's log in as Bob on a computer on that same network, and let's verify whether or not the NetScaler will indeed do load balancing across those 3 web servers for us. So on Bob's desktop, let's go ahead and launch Chrome. And here's what I did. On Bob's shortcut for Chrome, I went to Properties, and I told it that I want to go ahead and launch Chrome and use incognito every single time I bring it up. And the reason I've done this is I want the opportunity to make sure that we see if load balancing is really working. With most browsers, if we hit a web page and hit the same content again, if it's cached, you're going to see the same information. And for the lab, it's nice to have that confirmation that the load balancing really is happening as we configured it. So we're going to use incognito mode. So we'll open up a browser. I set my default homepage to be .201, and there is the red web server. Now these 3 web servers, server 1, 2, and 3, they're identical, except for the homepage has a different color. The red server has a red homepage. You got it. Green has green and blue has blue. So it's taken us to the red server. We'll go ahead and close that browser window. We'll reopen it. My hands will never leave my arms. And it comes up blue. I always have a little nervous moment there because there are, again, several factors that could cause it to come up red every single time. For example, maybe we didn't enable the load balancing service. Or maybe we're using a browser that is caching the information. So you may want to try using Chrome with incognito. Close your browser between attempts and reopen it to make sure that you're not keeping any cached information. So that's blue. We'll close that window. We'll reopen it. And this one should be green. And there it is. That's a beautiful thing. And this will serve as a great baseline that the load balancing on the NetScaler is indeed happening across the 3 servers. For it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.